This is Coaching Club TV. I'm Tremaine du Preez and I am delighted to welcome Alison O'Leary to be here with us. Thank you for coming all the way down, Alison.
Thank you for having me.
Alison has spent the last 19 years in the marketing and communications industry, most recently with RacePoint Global as their Deputy MD.
Yeah.
And then she moved into coaching. She is now a Martha Beck certified life coach. And one of the tools she focuses a lot on and uses a lot is StrengthsFinder.
Yeah.
StrengthsFinder is a Gallup psychometric that was originally published through the work of Dr. Donald Clifton, who is considered the father of strengths-based psychology, which is probably another term that you've heard a lot in the coaching world. So Alison, do you want to tell us a little bit about why strengths-based psychology is becoming so popular as opposed to remedial psychology?
Well, the whole premise of it is that if you actually focus on your strengths versus your weaknesses, two things happen. A, you're going to really enjoy the work that you do because it's drawing on the things you are naturally talented at. And B, you're much more likely to be successful, again, because you're using what you're good at. So I use it with individuals and also with organisations, and I have people actually take the StrengthsFinder assessment, and then I sit down with each individual and actually go through the assessment. So depending on what their results are, they will have the system will tell them what their top 5 strengths are. And we will actually go through them individually to look at what they really mean and how they play out for that individual so that they can actually recognise that this is what they do day in, day out without much thinking about it. And then actually how they apply that to their job roles. They start to look at their job role through the lens of their strengths to see how they can actually maximise those talents for the good of themselves and their career path, but also for the organisation. So it's a win-win for both. What StrengthsFinder does, it doesn't put a label on people to start with, which, people that take those other types of psychometric tests be put off before they even start. It's a different approach because typically through our education system and then follow through into the corporate world, we tend to focus on people's weaknesses. So you might have an annual performance review, and in that review you'll have a tick list of all the things that you need to have achieved. And typically what happens is you'll sit down with your manager and somebody will say, or you'll look at, oh, these things you did really well, tick, 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 but actually here are the things you need to improve, and they're usually the things that people aren't so good at. And that can be quite demotivating. What StrengthsFinder does is it flips that on its head. And so by understanding what an individual is innately talented at, you can actually look at how do you draw those strengths out and use them to their maximum in an organisation, because then that individual is going to feel highly motivated. It really helps with retention, and it gives them a kind of long-term career path within an organisation, and everybody wins. They do a lot of what they do well, and the organisation benefits from that. Well, let's just take a step back and actually just explain kind of what StrengthsFinder is as a whole. StrengthsFinder itself is a methodology that is based on an enormous body of research. So the Gallup organisation actually interviewed over 2 million people who are highly successful at their jobs in every kind of industry and discipline that you can imagine. So they went out and interviewed the world's top basketball players and engineers and doctors and lawyers to figure out what it was that made those individuals so good at what they did. What was it that made them successful in their jobs? And they crunched the data down, they analysed it, and they boiled it down into 34 strengths that any one person might have. And they're not really sort of pat things like, oh, you're really good at being organised, you're good at logistics. It's much deeper than that. It's actually based on how you intuitively interact with people, with data, and with the world at large. And so when somebody takes the assessment, it's based on all of that research and data, and the assessment will tell that person what their top 5 strengths are. And then in a session with me, what we do is we actually go through the 2 reports that get delivered through the assessment that tell you what your top 5 are. So we will actually go into detail to look at what each of those strengths really mean and how they play out for the individual, and then how they can actually apply them to their job role. So say, for example, somebody had a strength, one of the 34 strengths is something called futuristic. And it's quite a strategic strength, and it's people that have the ability to peer over the horizon, to see what's coming, to always be asking the question, what if this happened? What if that happened? And so those individuals are going to be particularly good in brainstorms, coming up with new ideas. They're going to be the kind of people that will really help come up with ideas for your company's sort of products or services. What's the next thing out the gate? So, I would go through the strengths with the individual, look at what they mean, and then come up with concrete actions that they can take in order that they can put those strengths, their own strengths, on steroids, really. Like, how do they actually apply them in their job role? And that might mean, depending on how senior or junior they are within an organisation, they might go, talk to their manager about how they get more involved in the types of activities that use their strengths. And then obviously from a corporation point of view, it's really important that HR are involved. So that it's followed through and that individuals get the opportunity to do a lot of what they're really naturally good at.
Now, this, I imagine, is quite foundational in the work that you do in career coaching.
Certainly is.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit more about Work Wonderland, which I know is a product that you're bringing out?
Yes.
Which I am very excited.
So Work Wonderland is essentially a product that helps people who are unfulfilled in the job roles or the jobs that they're doing, but they don't really know what it is they ought to be doing instead. And so Work Wonderland actually helps them figure out their answer. So it's a system that I've developed over the course of time that I've been coaching with people, particularly when I'm working with people who have absolutely no idea what their ideal career or career path is. Whether they've been working for 30 years in different jobs or they haven't started work yet, it works equally both ways. And so Work Wonderland is actually an online course with a number of exercises that enable people to do the exercises, come up with their results, and their results get plotted into a web application and called the Map of You. The Map of You is basically a body of data that encompasses you and what components are most important to your perfect career. And at the end of those 9 exercises that individuals do, they then do a series of 5 exercises to help them interpret the data on their map, which will give them their ideal career answer. So StrengthsFinder, that we've just been talking about, is one component of the initial 9 exercises that give you the information to actually base a concrete decision on.
And of course, this has the option of some coaching sessions with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So people can either do the online course themselves. It's a series of videos, and effectively the whole course is a how-to. But if you actually are interested in doing it with somebody, doing it with me, having somebody, with you along the way to help support you and manage, help you through that process, or indeed actually once you've figured out what your ideal career is, actually make it happen, then you can buy a series of coaching sessions to go with it.
For those who are watching and who are thinking about a career change, are there any tips that you can give them to help sort out their thinking about where to begin in looking for a new career or making a change?
Well, there are sort of 4 foundational components, really, and they relate to strengths is one, personal values, so the ways in which you have to live and work in order to be happy. Everybody is different. Skills, so what transferable skills have you got from the job roles and the personal roles that you've played through your lifetime, and passions, which is actually a really important piece, and a lot of people don't genuinely know what they're passionate about, find it very hard to pinpoint. So one of the exercises in the course actually addresses that, and I've got an exercise called the Happy Box, and it's really simple, and I get people to get an empty box and to put it somewhere where they're going to see it every day, and for a couple of weeks to just go about their lives noticing what lights them up, what makes them feel good, what makes them happy, and every time they notice something, they put something that represents that thing in the box, and it could just as easily be a scribble on a post-it note as a physical object. So they keep throwing things into the box over the course of 2 weeks, and then at the end of it actually look at what they've got, and they'll provide really interesting indicators in terms of what it is that makes an individual happy, and then you can actually look at, is there anything on that list that you might actually be able to tie in with or apply to your ideal job role.
So this has been Coaching Club TV. I'm Coach Tremaine du Preez with Executive Coach Alison O'Leary. So I hope that's given you some ideas about how powerful the strengths-based approach is and some tips about thinking about your career and your strengths. And remember, if you need a little bit of help with that, contact us at the Coaching Club. We're a team of friendly, well-qualified professional coaches.